All right, we are back from that fire drill interruption. I'm feeling like we've all evacuated successfully. So, welcome back, Rich. Please just jump right in. I don't know where you were. You had introduced yourself in two languages. Please pick up where you are. You're on mute now, but yeah, just welcome back.
Wuli Wuni, Kwayam Ziwi, Kanami Tol Na Mina. I see you again. Hello, my friends. I'll pick up on the introduction there. I'm chair of the Vermont Commission on Native American Affairs, or VCNAA, which you can find on the web very easily under Google. It's the first return under VCNAA worldwide. There you go. I am a citizen of Elnu-Abenaki, function there as Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, looking out for cultural interests. I am founder and director of Atawi, which is a cultural outreach organization on behalf of the contemporary Abenaki communities. I work most closely with my own tribe, but with all of the communities. That organization is 2 years old, and I have a co-director in the person of Melody Walker-Mackin, who you may also know from past presentations or commission membership. I was appointed to the VCNAA, which is a 9-member commission appointed by the governor upon recommendation of personnel at the Department of Historic Preservation, which is the department under the Agency of Community Development with direct oversight, direct liaison with us. People apply for these positions. Preference is given to citizens of the 4 Vermont tribes, but members of non-affiliated Native organizations or groups, whether they are tribes or not, are also welcome to apply. And then the governor makes the appointments. I served on the commission for 4 years, from about 2016 to 2020, in which capacity I did appear before this committee and others to provide testimony on bills of interest. And I was reappointed this year. And at the first meeting in September, I was elected chair. So it's good to be here in that capacity. I put on another hat. I already had quite a few. They're probably falling off at this point. It's a busy commission. It's gotten busier. Given the times that we live in, with the increased awareness and attention to inclusion measures, the bills that have been going through the legislature have entrusted the commission with a number of statutory seats on advisory boards and councils, and the commission is charged with overseeing those. So we're 9 members. We have rotating 2-year terms. We are fully seated now. In recent years, we've had a hard time getting the seats filled. As you know, there's just never enough bodies to go around, and there's a lot to do. But we are fully seated out, and we are required to have 3 meetings a year by statute. The tribal recognition statute, which passed in 2010, created this commission and this recognition framework, but we meet 9 times a year, and we're having a hard time keeping up at 9 times. Those are 3-hour meetings once a month, and we usually meet in Montpelier. So what are we doing these days? There's a lot going on. There were quite a number of legislative initiatives that were successful in the last couple of years. And so we are in the process of implementing those and trying to see them through to accomplish their missions. Among them, relatively new ones are the Land Access and Opportunity Board, a bill that passed just this past year. That board is charged with investigating the ability of communities, populations that have not been able to access land and the opportunities that come with that in terms of housing or livelihood in an equitable manner. And we all know that that is a ongoing problem. And this board, the LAOB, is charged with beginning to look at that, making recommendations, some of them of which might be quite drastic because the system is the system. And we'll see where that goes. That board is just getting underway. And the commission has a member on that board in the person of John Bosley, who is a representative from Nulhegan tribe. And he's working on that. This board is scheduled to present a sunrise report to the legislature this month. And then they will get underway with their work. They meet every other week. They're very busy. They're very committed. It's a good group of people. Another board that we staff with a seat is the Health Equity Advisory Commission, which has been ongoing for a while underneath the Office of Racial Equity with Susanna Davis. Each of the tribes, the 4 tribes, has got a person there. It is a large group, and they are tasked similarly as the previous board, but looking into matters of access to health in an equitable manner. Again, this is a systemic situation that will take a long time to work through, and they are still basically in their formative stages. The next one is also brand new, is the Racial Injustice Advisory Council. Similarly themed. Where does Vermont fall short, or where could it do more in terms of serving all of the people here? And that is brand new this year. The commission is charged with providing a seat member there, and we have appointed Stacy Gould, who is outside of the commission, but well known to us. She is from the Missisquoi Abenaki community. And that appointment was just made, and they are just about to get going. I think they only filled the seats this month, so they haven't actually met yet. Another board is the Environmental Justice Advisory Council, primarily under the oversight of the Agency of Natural Resources. This is an interagency and citizen-staffed board, which will look at matters of environmental justice. And the commission was charged with providing a seat member there, a seat which I am filling at the moment. That is about to convene later this month. They have not met yet. They were just put together. And that was a new legislative initiative this past year. In an ongoing manner, we are not directly involved with, but we are definitely following this closely. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which came out of this committee, that is still getting underway. It is charged with, forgive me, Chair Stevens, if I fumble here, but a lot. Looking at implications of the state's past actions and current actions in terms of populations that have not had equal treatment, to put it mildly. That is an extra, what would you call it? It's outside of state jurisdiction because it's exploring what's happened with the state. So this is an impartial commission with outside investigators that will be appointed by an impartial panel. It's like a two steps away from the state, and they are not active yet. There's a whole lot of things that came down the pike all of a sudden. Another ongoing endeavor is the Equity in Education, also called Act One at the time, which is to examine aspects of state curricula and the narratives that are taught. Where can we use some improvement there? As you're probably aware, education is a matter often of local jurisdiction, and the Agency of Education does not actually mandate curricular inclusion. It becomes discretionary at the local level, but they can make recommendations, and that has been underway for 2 or 3 years now. And there is a representative from the Abenaki community there in person of Vera Longtoshian, who is ELNU citizen and director of the Vermont Abenaki Artists Association and the Abenaki Arts and Education Center. Another item that's sort of dangling right now that we're trying to chase down is the Tobacco 21 initiative, which passed 3 years ago. This put Vermont on the same path as a majority of the states in this country, raising the user age for tobacco to 21 from 18. At the time that this passed, concerns were raised that tobacco is a ceremonial and sacred material for Native people, and it is a religious discrimination to ban that wholesale. However, the law went straight through with promises to deal with it in enforcement, but that is discretionary, and that is not in our minds how law should function. We should be looking at this carefully. So you may be seeing something coming into some committee somewhere to make an amendment to that, which should have been handled 3 years ago. What else? The Vermont State Park signage legislation, which proposes to add Abenaki place names or place reference to state park signs. That passed 2 years ago and is just getting rolled out now. The very first sign was placed last month down here in Guilford at Sweet Pond. It is a process that will be rolled out by attrition as signs are are needed or replaced. They will have this inclusionary measure attached to them. That is ongoing. It is open to whoever wants to participate, and I'm looking forward to that, to bringing this language of the land back to the place where it belongs. Outside of legislative mandates, we implemented last year an ad hoc Native caucus, which is voluntary participation by members from the tribal communities, from the commission, and with legislators that choose to participate. And this helped us to get a grip on the myriad of things that were in motion, to prioritize them and to shepherd them through the process. As we all learned how to do this, what goes on up there in Montpelier, we understand a little better now. And so that caucus arrangement is just getting underway again for this session. It is facilitated by Representative Catherine Sims. Catherine does a great job. In recognition of that, the commission awarded Catherine the Legislative Recognition Award for this year. And we're continuing. We feel that our main priorities this year are to try to stay on top of all of these things I just listed for you. The easy part is to pass the bill. The hard part is making sure it happens, funding it, overseeing it, checking for results. The commission was given a grant from Seventh Generation company to help develop a specific Abenaki curriculum for distribution to schools, because we don't know what's going to come out of the Equity in Education Act 1 endeavor that is for everybody, not specifically Abenaki. So we're working on that ourselves, and we've been funded by Seventh Generation. We are in the process of meeting with both you folks in various capacities, with the governor. We will be meeting with the governor to bring him up to date sometime in the next month. We are in ongoing discussions with UVM through the provost office. As you may or may not be aware, there has been a unrestful socio-political atmosphere in the past year from any number of directions, and it's something that we need to deal with. Other people are saying things that are not true, and the communities here are finding their own voice so they can speak for themselves. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer that. I'm going to stop right there. I just tossed a whole bunch of things and words at you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Rich, the thing that's always struck me about the commission, and the commission has been, I think, reinvigorated over the last 5 years. I think it's been much more active than it had been in the previous 10, due, I think, to the capacity issue. I mean, you all get paid tons of money to show up for meetings, right? I mean, somewhere around $50 and $125 or something like that, right? Including travel. But what I appreciate, and I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the importance of two things within the commission, which is first of all, kind of an insistence that every tribe has its own voice. So it's been hard for us to, I think traditionally we're used to saying, well, we need a representative from the commission. And I know, some of your predecessors have been like, no, you need 4 voices from the commission or more, because you don't only serve the recognized tribes. So I just wanted to, if you could talk a little bit about the need to share 4 voices to start off with, but also the relationship you have with unaffiliated Indigenous Vermonters.
For sure. That's a good thing to try to clear up. The commission is, in my eyes, the commission was created in 2010 by an act of the legislature when the recognition process was created at the same time. And I see it as standing as a liaison and as a shared voice for those groups that have gone through that process and for those that have not, between those communities and the state itself. It's the in-between interpretive body. The things that we are charged with having oversight of is the well-being of those and access to services, state services, or otherwise, of those 4 groups and for unaffiliated people, and to vet people who might be applying for recognition for the first time. That has not happened for quite a few years. The initial rush is over, and we represent multiple communities, so no one person speaks for anyone else. This is a traditional approach. Everyone counts the same, and no one is above anyone else. We all serve at the pleasure of our people. I think that the commission tries to do a pretty good job of representing all the tribes. We do have representatives from all 4 groups, and we have people who are not affiliated with any of those tribes and who may actually be from a completely different people. elsewhere in the country, they may or may not be recognized, or they may not choose to participate in a recognized group. You can see that we tried to allow for multiple voices, for plurality here. We try to do everything by consensus as much as possible. Majority rule doesn't cut it. In our book, everyone needs to be included. So that's what we aim for. Some people are more active than others, for sure. You'll hear and see some people more than others because, well, first of all, they may have the drive to do that, or they may be in a position to be able to do that. I'm able to do the work that I do, both as chair and with my nonprofit, and prior to all of that, because I wanted to, and now I have funding. This is my job. I find my own funding through philanthropic means and private donations. But there aren't very many of us. So you'll tend to see some people more than others, but we always try to bring people in. And under my watch at the commission, I am very, very committed to transparency and open communication and inclusion. If anyone has anything to say, I want to hear it. And I don't like secrets. So we're here for everyone.
And I'm gonna share with the committee just a little bit of the history of recognition, talk about 2010. And Rich, you can correct me. I think that's around the period of time where I met you the first time, was during when we were trying to get that right upstairs. And this is going to lead to a question about what you raised, where you're having difficulties in the community with UVM in particular. I'll name it. There's the Odanak of Quebec have accused the Vermont recognized tribes as being pretendians, not real. There was a very difficult situation when UVM sponsored a conversation without inviting our Indigenous group to participate in the conversation, if it would even have been a conversation as opposed to an argument. And so as Rich was saying, in 2010, we worked on a process to, first of all, to recognize on a state-based level any particular bands of Abenaki that applied, and there was a real inclusive effort to find a way to create a recognition process so that it wasn't just we say this and they say that. It was a process that we tried to apply some academic points of view, but also trying to respect the privacy of tribal roles, and also to work against what America has determined in the case of Americans of African descent, a one-drop rule that existed for a very long time, which basically said if you have one drop of African American blood in you, then you are African American, and it was used as a tool to discriminate against people for maybe even still today. For us, so according to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, now state recognition is not federal recognition. We do not make land grants. We do not allow for casinos. We do not allow for other land ownership that may come down as the decades move on. But right now it was about recognizing a group of Vermonters who have an identity that was being ignored to a large degree. And traditionally, according to BIA, there's three ways of determining who belongs to a tribe or a band of Native Americans or Indigenous people. One is blood quantum, which is essentially the one drop rule. How much of an Indian are you is a phrase that is incredibly derisive and oppressive. The second is lineage, which is another form of blood quantum. Can you prove through your ancestry through a legitimate, quote unquote, legitimate ancestry, that you have a connection to someone in the past who has indigenous blood in them. Again, that's a form of blood quantum. It's exceedingly difficult in Vermont, and when Vermonters did try to make federal recognition back in the early 1990s, one of the walls they ran into was you had to prove, there was two levels, but the first one was you had to prove that you were an ongoing entity on January 1, 1900. Made more difficult by the fact that Vermont's written history was only 100 or so years old at that point, written in English. And the census, the national census burned in 1890. The whole national census burned in 1890. That was before they started making copies of the census. And so people couldn't easily, especially in Vermont, where we know indigenous populations were forced to go hiding, even from an early date. Samuel de Champlain hit Vermont shores in 1608. By 1763, 90% of the indigenous population in the Northeast had been killed or had died from disease. So again, when we talk about who was on this land and where and when were there borders, all these things that when the Europeans settled Vermont in the 1700s, many of the original or previous inhabitants were gone. And a lot of them moved up to Quebec before there were borders. And where that shows now, so when we created the recognition, the third avenue was social. Essentially saying that if you say that you are a member of this band or tribe, and that tribe accepts you into their folds, then you are a member of that tribe or band. And that's up to each of the tribes. We kept ourselves at arm's length from determining to say, if Rich is an Indian or not. From a governmental perspective, that's a terrible place to be. It's an awkward place to be, and it was a early form of reparation, of just trying to say, this is not how we want to determine who an Indian is. And I use that term because it's intermittent. We know that it should be indigenous, the Vermonters in this case. That's what we settled on. And then each of the bands that have been recognized had to go through a process that they primarily ran through the Department of ACCD, with the archaeologists and whatnot, and legislators did not have a piece of the decision-making process, except they had to vote on it. And we voted on 2 bands one year and 2 bands the next year. And it wasn't without controversy that we approved these 4 bands. But they've been there. The point that we used as an in to this recognition was culture, was Abenaki art, because indigenous art cannot be shown in museums if you're not recognized. And the museums could be fined tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for calling something indigenous art if that indigenous artist was not part of an approved group. And so we used that as an in to say, this is why we want the Abenaki to be able to have their own culture. They can't do it federally. You get basically one strike. They've had that. There's possibilities that they might be able to apply in the future, but it's a very difficult process ongoing now in southeastern Massachusetts with the Wampanoags. Years and years and years and years and years and years of trying to get their federal recognition and people taking it away and giving it back to them. So all of that is just to say, here we are now. And the incident that Rich was talking about was members, not the whole tribe, but members of the Odanak in Quebec went to UVM and have been working. At the time of recognition, I'll go back a half a step. At the time of recognition, there were many people who didn't necessarily live in Vermont who had blogs or who had histories or had opinions about whether or not anybody who was applying to be a member of a Vermont band whether they were real Indians or not. And so that's kind of reared its head again, where members of this Canadian tribe are upset and have made accusations against saying that, well, they don't have lineage, there's no proof. The report that was written by the Attorney General of the state of Vermont in 1992 shows that the Abenaki never existed or they weren't here. I mean, all of these things that they've been hearing for years and years and years. When we did the public apology, of course, you read stuff that says, well, were they basket weavers? Were they gypsies? You know, even in 19th century, I have a history of the town of Waterbury that refers to any Indian who lived here before the Europeans as Mohawks. So it's really a difficult place for us to be. And we made a decision back in 2010 and then 11 and 12 to recognize tribes and bands and try to give them the tools to get to the point where we are today, which is creating art centers, which is all of the inclusion that Rich was talking about into boards at the beginning of this. And I'm sorry, Rich, I just had to name as much as I possibly could. And I apologize if it was painful, but I just want the committee to know that this is you are not, the commission or any unaffiliated members who come to us are not simply advocates. You're working to create something that has been on life support to some degree. And I just want to name it so that we know that moving forward how difficult it's been to get to this point and to see how much has changed since 2010. And yet how much more has to be done. And so thank you for your work so far. And do you have any thoughts on that?
I want to thank
or corrections.
That was admirable. Thank you, Chair Stevens. You covered a lot of territory there and sort of laid it out. And all I will do is concur. I'll just make some broad observations around that, and then I want to leave some time for more questions if there are any. This is a very strange situation, strange and complex situation. The entire structure or system of recognition of whatever sort or non-recognition is all a product of colonization. Nobody asked for this. It didn't need to be this way, but it is. The federal government took it upon itself eventually took it upon itself. You know, oversight of Native people was originally under the Secretary of War in the United States. That's kind of telling. And then they pulled it out and they put it under the Interior, Department of the Interior, with all of the other wild creatures, and they created the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And that's where this authority resides primarily nowadays. Federal government has taken what's called plenary power. It has assumed this power for itself. It was never given to it, except by divine right. And you might laugh if I say that, but that's where all of this comes from. Colonization springs from doctrine of discovery, which was decreed by the Pope. Talk about the separation of church and state. It was the Pope that empowered European adventurers to come here and take everything because they were European and Christian. They had a right to do that. And our entire legal system is built on that, to the point that even Ruth Bader Ginsburg invoked the doctrine of discovery in the past 10 years. And it's kind of incredible, but that's the way it goes. So federal recognition is a process that's put in place. One of the groups in Vermont did try to go through that process. As Chair Stevens pointed out, it is arduous. It is the numbers that are thrown around. It takes 20 years and $20 million. Who's got that? Not many of us. So Missisquoi was not successful in that bid. Most people are not. Why? It's made intentionally difficult. The federal government is not in the business of wanting to take on more people for whom it is responsible. That's a liability. So they try to minimize their exposure. A really telling statistic is that of the 573 federally recognized tribes, 573, quite a few, it's a fraction of the people that were here. Keep that in mind. Of those 573, only 36 of them are in the East. Not because there were no indigenous people here, but because indigenous people in the East part of this country have been colonized longer, and they can't prove they are who they say they are for all of these reasons that the chair outlined. Documentation, continuity, lineage, blood quantum, whatever you want to call it. So in some places, states have taken it upon themselves to do what's right. They know who their people are. They've always been there in some way, shape, or manner. And so there's a state recognition process. And I think there are 60 or 70 state recognized tribes in this country, and 300 groups that are not recognized at all. Some tribes have been going through a recognition process for upwards of 50 years because somebody else writes the rules. However, we're here in Vermont. Vermont has decided to take this approach, for which we are grateful. Other people don't agree with it. This is all because we're all saddled with this system of recognition and colonization. And some people want to play that game in one way. Some people want to play it in another way. Some people don't want to play it at all. We recognize that we live in this world and in this country and in these times, and we have to find a way through this. And so this is what we have. We have a state recognition process, for which I'm grateful. I wish we didn't have to, but we're here to say we're here. We're part of the community. Always have been, always will be. What is the point of this? We are not a special interest group. We're not. We're not just another group of people. We're not a social club. Indigenous people have been here with their ancestors and their allies for 12,000 years. That's proven. I call that sustainability. I call those values that last and have stood the test of time. I'm not talking about technology or methodologies. I'm talking about values. We need to know how to live here in a good way, and Indigenous people know those ways. They may not know them in a complete way anymore because colonization, but we can bring those things back. That knowledge is here. It comes out of this land. Ndakina, the homelands of the Abenaki people, it's where we are. We got to figure this out. And so we're up for it. That's why I'm here speaking with you. It's why I'm chairing the commission. I recognize that we are all in this together, and we are all related, and we are all family. You are, all of you sitting there right now, you are my family in one way or another. We are family, and we need to figure this out for our children and our grandchildren, because this planet is not doing well. Our mother is not being treated respectfully. I take this very seriously. It's a responsibility. I don't go down the road of rights necessarily. We're all about individual rights here. I go down the road of responsibility, and I am responsible to you. So I'm going to try to do the best I can. I appreciate your help and your consideration in this. Not going anywhere. So if you have questions, get a hold of me. I'm available.
And just
Questions.
as we get more bills, there is a tension though of what we can do from a state recognized perspective and a federally recognized perspective. And there's always, that's not a tension that's unique to our work with indigenous population, but it is definitely pointed out more because this is state recognition and not federal recognition. So, any questions for Rich at this time? No, thank you, Rich, for spending time and for introducing yourself, your work, and we'll have more testimony as the bills come in, and we need your input. So thank you for taking the time and for getting through our evacuation process. And
Right.
I hope you went outside for a few minutes, like we did, and we'll see you soon, hopefully in 3D.
So we for sure Kitsi Wulioni Nidombak. Thank you very much, my friends, and I hope we speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
All right. Committee, that's all we have for today. We will pick up tomorrow with more introductions with some of the labor advocates that are in the building, including but not limited to somebody who's related to Representative Howard. We'll hear from a representative from the Vermont NEA, from Working Vermonters Caucus, and from the AFL-CIO. And then tomorrow afternoon, we will hear, did we schedule an EAA conversation? Okay, we will probably have a beginning conversation before lunch tomorrow on the Budget Adjustment Act. And then tomorrow afternoon, we have more conversation about housing, but we'll be hearing from the Associated General Contractors, the Realtors, and bankers, both Bankers Association and the, if he can make it, and the credit unions. So just to get an idea of some of the stuff that we've heard from their perspective. How difficult is it for a developer to get a loan? Why is it so difficult for a developer to get a loan, et cetera? So, but with that, that's tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we'll have more on this budget adjustment and Homelessness Awareness Day. So, let's go home early tonight. Yeah.
So in the past, when I've
Yep.
when I
We're still live on YouTube. Yeah, that's fine.
in the past, when I've been here, there's like a State House steps. People say, is that still happening this year, or is it? I saw, like, I know we have the joint, but like just in general, like people that used to speak and.
Last year, I think, was the first time that they did it in a couple of years because of the pandemic.
Yep.
We haven't.
So what was explained to me is that the way they're doing it this year is each county, rather than the organization, each county is doing their own activity. And Washington County advocates are organizing a vigil on the State House steps, which, as a couple hours ago, the Sergeant at Arms or the Capitol Police knew about. So I don't know exactly what the plan is for tomorrow.
Okay.
I shared that information with the organizer of the day, saying,
Right.
so
Okay. Thank you.
maybe would be the
Yeah.
answer.
Okay. Thank you. Guess we'll wait and see.
All right. Anything before we go off the air?